I met Baba in 1952, in 1956, in 1958, in 1962, and then I went to the last darshan when his body was there in 1969. So I have him covered a little bit, but that's only externally. Internally, I haven't got anything covered, so. In 1952, that was a long time ago as far as this world is concerned. It was after World War II, the most horrible thing that ever happened in my lifetime anyway. And America was over-generous about welcoming into our country those people who had suffered so badly. It was a good idea, but there were too many people who weren't deserving of the invitation. And I don't blame them because they had suffered so much during the war, and they were just anxious to get away and get to that glorious country, America, you know. So they came here, and mostly they were not qualified for the roles they were assuming. They were leaders of some sort, but they had no idea how to communicate with Americans. And mostly, when I went to hear them, I would think, I don't like what he's saying. I don't like his attitude. I can't say I blame these people for trying to get away with as much as they could, but I would go to see them. And what they needed, of course, was financial help. That was basic. And after going to see about 40 of these different characters in New York, where I was living with Harold, or I was married to Harold, I should have said, I said, that's enough. I've had it. I feel sorry for all these people, but they're all disillusioned, and they're all trying their best to get out of their circumstances. I probably would do the same thing myself, but they cannot help me. First I was going to be a nun, then I became an atheist, and then I gave up. I didn't get involved in all this, so I had washed my hands of this racket. So one day he comes to me, oh, Virg, you got to go see this guy who's coming. He's just great. He's just wonderful. Everybody says he's great. Yes, what's his name? Meher Baba. What kind of a name is that? It's not an American name anyway. Well, I'm not going. I had taken my stance by now. I am not going. Pester, 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 pester. And you must come and see him. Well, after enough pestering, I always gave in. Weakness. I said, all right, I'll go. Where's he coming? To Carnegie Hall? Half of them came to Carnegie Hall. No, he's not coming to Carnegie Hall. Well, where is he coming? South Carolina. South Carolina. I'm never going to South Carolina. That's the pit of ignorance. I'm never going. Forget the whole thing. Well, he forgot it for one day, and then he started up again and started hounding me to go again. Oh, finally I got tired of it. I said, oh, what the hell, I'll go to South Carolina. I mean, I knew what it was like. I was up a little bit on geography and civics and a few things, and knew a few people who had been to South Carolina, and South Carolina wasn't with it. So we go down, we drive down. You know, all the rivers run to the ocean. And we were driving along the Atlantic seaboard. Rivers, 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 rivers. But no bridges over the rivers. Every river you had to stop, get on a tugboat, be dragged across the river and get off on the other side. It took us 2 days to get down here. So finally we got here. And when we came, it was morning. We were driving all night. It was morning. And they said, go to the barn. At the center, when we went into the center, they said, go to the barn. There you will meet Mayor Baba. Okay, so we go over to the barn. Why not? So we're at the barn. Who's at the barn door but Kitty and Margaret, right? And Margaret I had met in New York. And so I was surprised to see her, but I had come to see her in New York because they had pestered me so much in New York. Fred, Ella, John, everybody, Gabriel, everybody. So I had gone, and she had said to me, you belong to Mayor Baba. And I said, I belong to myself. I don't belong to anybody. So when I heard she was down there, I thought, well, that's a minus point too. So they said, Kitty says, now you each get 5 minutes. And Harold starts screaming. He was a good one to start screaming all the time. And he said, 5 minutes? I didn't drive down here just for 5 minutes. I have a lot to tell him. So I was still young then and a little embarrassed. And I pulled Margaret over and I said, give him my 5 minutes. I don't need to see this guy, no matter how you feel about me. And she says, nothing doing. I'm not letting off you. I'm gonna, if I have to, I'll push you in. So I said, oh God. All right, let them do what they want. Can't hurt me. And so finally the door opened and Harold disappeared. After his 5 minutes, the door opens again and Margaret escorts me in, pushing me. I went inside. And nothing else can be done. I become completely unconscious. I'm stupefied. I'm unaware of anything or anybody. All I can recall is a beautiful golden light. And I'm up in the sky someplace. Everything was beautiful and golden. And I was divinely happy. I didn't have to argue with anybody. I was there. They said Baba sat me on his lap and he kissed me and hugged me and told me how much he loved me, but I was never there, never. The next thing I remember is 3 hours later, I came to. I was sitting behind the barn on those stone seats that are back there. And I came to very slowly, still dazed, not really conscious. Next thing I knew, I was in the car with Harold driving back home. I was divinely happy. I was in love. I was in love with somebody I had never seen, never even wanted to see. I don't know how I did it. I came home, I've been in love ever since. I'm back in New York now. Margaret's after me. Not only Margaret, but Fred and Ella and John. He was the worst. He was on my neck all the time. In fact, he was kind of sweet on me. But he was for Baba. And John Bass. And then Gabriel came to New York. Gabriel Pascal. And I became very good friends with Gabriel. another Gemini. And they were great meetings. I love the meetings. I was in love with Bob, as I say. I don't know how I got to be in love with him. I couldn't get out of it. I was mad. I had no reason to feel the way I did, no reason to use my head and say this is great or wonderful. I was just gone completely. I went to all the meetings and I met all the people, and they didn't appear too bad. Well, this guy can't be too bad if these are the people who are following him. They seem a little different from some of the others whom I had encountered before. So I held on. And then about a couple of months later, Baba went, and she was still in South Carolina when we left. He went from South Carolina out on a trip. He was going to California, and he got stuck in Oklahoma, where he had a very severe automobile accident. He was just so broken up. And he wrote to us and said, we should send him jokes and funny stories every day, because that would relieve the tension. So every day I wrote to Baba, whom I had never seen, whom I was madly in love with. And I sent him jokes and funny stories. That was my original correspondence with Baba, jokes and funny stories. And then he came up to New York from Myrtle Beach. And the word went out that we could go to see Baba. So naturally, we raced over to see him. He was staying at Ivy's apartment. He was in bed there in a bedroom. And the door opened, and we went into the bedroom where Baba was lying in bed. And he was up at the top of the bed, all bundled up in bandages and whatnot. And we came across the bed at the bottom where the rail was. And Harold was before me. He went ahead of me, and I came after him. And I was so shaken by taking a quick look at Baba that I just held on to the rail. I was afraid I was going to faint. But Harold dashed up to the front of the bed, and he looks at him, and the two of them are engaged in this conversation before I even recovered from my insanity of not even being able to see straight. And here are the two of them at the head of the bed, not paying any attention to me at all. I'm holding on to the rail at the bottom of the bed, swinging back and forth. And Harold and Baba are chatting away at no end. And I don't know what they were talking about. And Baba never looks at me, never pays any attention. And he goes on. And then I come to enough to hear that Baba is thanking Harold for sending so many jokes and funny stories. And Harold saying, that's nothing, Baba, no trouble at all. I enjoy doing it. And so I'm hanging on to the bed at the bottom, and it's getting shaky down there. Harold, he didn't do it. I don't think I even got this thought through my head. I was just waving my finger. He didn't do it. I. And I started to come up. And I thought, oh my God. Am I going to shout out or something here? I don't know what I'm going to do. I'd lost control, and I was holding. Then suddenly it came into my mind, what difference does it make who sent them to Baba? He says it helped them. Isn't that why you sent them? Isn't that why you sent them? And if they helped him, isn't that wonderful? And the minute I thought that, Baba dropped Harold like a hot potato, and he looks at me hanging on the bottom of the bed and winks at me. And then he puts out his arms like this and says, come. And I came up to the head of the bed, and I fell in his arms in divine bliss. And that's the first time I met him. we arranged to have a dinner for him. Before the dinner, we went to see him, and we each picked out different flowers that should go at the banquet. And we saw him individually, kneeling down in front of him, surrounded by flowers. Anyway, we had the dinner. They had 4 mandali on stage, and Baba had in front of him a toast, and we all got the same toast. It looked like wine, but it was grape juice. and when we weren't allowed to touch it until he said it's okay. And when he said it's okay, pick it up with him and drink a toast to him. We all drank it together. And then there's lots of musicians there, lots of people telling stories. It was sort of a gala affair for what I think of Baba's things being. And then Baba came down off the stage and walked around the auditorium there at Delmonico. And as he walked around, he would sometimes stop and pat somebody extra or something or other. And then as he was going behind me, I realized that he had stopped behind me. And he put his hands on my shoulder. And then he put his hand on my head. And I felt divine bliss, absolute bliss from Baba. And he just stood there. Nobody said anything. Later, Erich told me that I was pregnant and that Baba had decided that I was pregnant and that he was bringing the soul into the body. This was the 7th month. In Newark Airport, Baba got up on a shoe black stand. You know, they used to have those old shoe black stands, and he got up and sat up there like the king of the roost, and everybody was going up and bowing down to him, and so I thought, I'm going up and bow down to him too. And Erich was standing next to Baba, and everybody was coming down, bowing down to Baba. He is up in the stand, and Baba would say, love me more and more, love me more and more, love me more and more, love me more and more. So I go up to him and bow down from him. He says, love me more and more. No, no. He says, no, no, to Erich. No, 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 it's wrong, it's wrong, it's wrong. I thought, oh my God, he doesn't want me to love him. And he said something that really shattered me. He said, you have the love. And then he got in the airplane, and we kept turning around, looking at Baba instead of looking ahead. And then he gave an order that everybody had to face forward. But before that, he said, I had said, or Harold, I guess, had said, this is Virginia and Harold's first airplane ride. We had never been in a plane before. It was our first airplane ride. And so Baba sends back a message. This is Baba's first airplane ride with Virginia and Harold. He was always outdoing you. That was cute, yeah. So let me go back to the first night we came back to Myrtle Beach with Baba. We hadn't made reservations to come down here at that time. And the center was filled up, every nook and cranny. So when we came down here, we were put in a stop overnight place up on the highway, right opposite the center, but it wasn't on the center. And so the first thing Harold went in to see Baba, he complained. He was always complaining. Baba, we don't want to be up there. We want to be on the center. And Baba, he's always playing this innocent character. Well, why aren't they on the center? As if he didn't arrange it that way. And I guess it was Erich said, Baba, every place is taken. Everything's filled up. There's no more room. And then jokingly, Erich says, except the boathouse. And Baba, as quick as he said that, said, you want to stay in a boathouse? So I'd never seen the boathouse at the center, and I know Harold hadn't, not that he would have cared, but it was the boathouse. I lived in the north. The boathouse, they had dinners, they had dancing, they had places to sleep, they had everything. Well, you all can see the picture. Did you show a picture of the boathouse? You've got to show a picture of the boathouse. It was made of screens around each other. And the worst part was that there were some slats on the floor, but on the whole, I mean, underneath it, there was nothing to prevent, let me go back. The lagoon cabin is called the lagoon cabin because right next to it is a long slough of water. And that's where the alligators hatched their babies. And they slid from there down under the boathouse. And so they came and stuck their heads up. There was plenty of room for them to stick their heads up between the bars. There was no wire or anything there. Well, we didn't know this at the time. Baba looks quickly, you want to stay in a boathouse? Harold says, yes, yes. We didn't know what the boathouse was. It wasn't a Jersey boathouse, I knew that. We got down there, and everybody was very wonderful, bringing blankets and food down to us and helping us, right? So after supper, we went down to our cabin, and about an hour later, started the lightning and thunder. The boathouse is actually over the water. And it started to rain, and it turned into a hurricane, the worst hurricane they ever saw in South Carolina. And here we were in the boathouse. And I said, I'm not going to be scared. I know Baba's right up the hill. I'm not going to be scared. And I really wasn't. I was annoyed. I mean, got a little wet. The rain came in through those screens. The screens didn't do a damn thing. And I sat up on the bench and tried to cover myself. And then all of a sudden we looked out and we saw this bright light. The Andrea Doria, one of the biggest ships, luxury liners at the time, caught fire right a few miles out from where we were in the boathouse. So we had entertainment all night watching the Andrea Doria burn down. But it was scary, a little bit. But I thought, Baba's right up there. If anything's going to happen, he can take care of me. I'm not going to be scared. And it may sound bragging, but I don't think I was scared. I was annoyed, but I don't think I was scared. So the next morning, of course, oh boy, Baba holds his meetings outside the lagoon cabin. Did everybody sleep well? Joker. No! Why not? We were all worried about Virginia, who's pregnant, sleeping outside there in the boathouse all night long. So Baba turns to me and he says, were you scared? No, I wasn't going to say I was scared because I wasn't. I said, no, I wasn't scared. I was uncomfortable, yeah, but I wasn't scared. He said, good. But from now on, you're not allowed to sleep in the boathouse. But Harold has to stay there the whole rest of the trip. And so every woman in the place offered me her bed. And I didn't want to take another poor woman's bed, who she might have been pregnant and not known it too. So finally I got together with B. Dimple, whom I was friendly with, and I said, look, I got a great idea. Beds are made of two parts. There's the top mattress and there's the bottom spring. We'll cut it in half, and you'll have half and I'll have half. And we did. And she made room in her cabin, the cabin on the hill, And I stayed there for the rest of the trip, seeing Baba every day. Never rained again. In the lagoon cabin, which is where everything happens, Baba would call us in each day by ourselves independently. And he would have usually Erich as an interpreter, sometimes Adi, Adi a lot too. And when I walks into Baba, he starts rubbing his belly. So I said to him, yes, what is going on here? And he says, well, it's a baby, it's a baby. And you had nothing to do with it. I said, I know I had nothing to do with it. But I said, how come you know about it? And he just smiled and he said, this is my blessing to you. When this child grows up, he will be one of the best. Now, I want you to practice with me. And then I began my prenatal clinic with Baba for weeks. Every day I had to go in the lagoon cabin, hold his hands with my two hands, kneel down in front of him, and say his name 7 times from the heart. From the heart had to be. If I didn't bring it out from the heart, say it again, from the heart. And this was my prenatal clinic with Baba. But I was shocked, surprised, and I probably was very confused, very confused. It wasn't my plan at all. I didn't know how it happened. I mean, but Baba was there, and he took charge of everything. And he made everything seem as if it was right. We went to Brook Green Gardens with him. He loved it. And he would sit down very frequently. And once he sat under a very small tree. It might have been a very small palm tree, I'm not sure. But it was a small tree, and he sat down under it and pulled up his legs and so forth. And then he said, this reminds me of when I was Buddha. And went out with a group of people and sat under, what kind of tree was it? I forgot now.
Small tree.
No, it was a lightened tree. Sat under an oak tree? No, not an oak tree. A palm tree, I think it was. Well, anyway, I think it was a palm tree. He said, this reminds me of that experience. And so everybody's walking around with a pen. What was her name, Baba? What was her name? What was her name? What was her name? And he pretends he's trying to think. After he gets tired of that, he sits up and he says, oh, it was so long ago, I can't remember. I had hurt my leg, and Baba had hurt his leg. And I had got this special kind of shoe with rubber on the bottom that bounced you up and down. It didn't hurt so much. So I decided I was going to bring Baba a pair of those shoes, and I did. I brought them down here. And so when I got in the lagoon cabin in the beginning, first day, I gave them to Baba. And he said, he thanked me so beautifully and kissed me and said, thank you for thinking of him. And then he stuck his foot out for me to put it on. And I did not know that touching his feet was verboten. So I grabbed his foot and I started shoving it into the sandal. And he didn't say anything. He simply said, it's not what I wear, but you take this home and make a mantelpiece out of it. Hold it up someplace where people can see that I've touched it. But after, when I came out, everybody said, you touched Baba's foot. I didn't know it. And that is this sandal that you can see. It's never been worn, but Baba's foot has been in it.
Did you also kiss Baba on the lips in Lagoon Cabin in 1956?
Yes.
What was that experience like?
It was like kissing him on the lips. It was great. Everything about Baba was great. The smallest thing was great. If he gave you a glance out of the side of his eye, it was great. It just fills you so. It just fills you with whatever you needed.
So you had some kind of a special relationship with Baba too.
Yeah, well, he would call other people in, but he had me in every day for, I'd say, quite a long time, maybe an hour. And he would go over this, and he'd have me kneel in front of him, and he would hold my hand. Give me your hands, and hold my hand. Now look into my eyes, right? Now say Baba's name after me 7 times, right? And when this child is born, he's going to be one of the best. I want you to do a good job. And he would say, now practice. Baba, 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 Baba. And I didn't know what I was doing. I was half crazy. And so I said, oh, it's all right, Baba, it's all right. I'll be fine, I'll be fine. In the meantime, I really hadn't got a doctor. No doctor thought I was pregnant. Only Baba thought I was pregnant. Yeah. And you know, in those days, things were a lot different. I mean, this was the age in which every woman who was brought into the maternity ward was grabbed and jabbed, you know, and knocked out, because it was much easier for doctors to deliver babies when women aren't awake. Don't you think? And so I just had to figure out a way to be awake, get past these doctors. Well, the tests were still all negative up to the very last day. They were all negative. I don't understand it. But Baba kept writing to me, encouraging me, so I'll go along with it. And I was a big girl, and he was a very small baby. It didn't show. I was wearing my clothes. I was getting away with it. The water broke, and I said, oh, this is it. So I stayed awake all night, wait until the last minute, and then I said, well, I've got to go, because it's going to mess up the bed too much to have the baby here. So I've got to go. And I got to the hospital, and it had been working for quite a while. He'd been moving down. And he was a small baby, and it wasn't hard to move him down. And when he got almost close to the coming out part, right, the doctor was called. So as he said he'd come over, and he got there just as the feet were coming out. So I didn't have any whatever you get to be knocked out with. Anesthesia, thank you. I wasn't knocked out. I was alive and well. And he was a small baby, 5 pounds, 2 ounces. And I'm such a big girl. Hardly noticed it. It wasn't hard at all. Baba made it very easy. And
You could say his name 7 times.
yeah, said to say his name 7 times. And so it all, and then I look up, the doctor's there. They got the baby wrapped in a blanket. They're holding up the baby for me to see. I said, oh my God, he looks just like my husband. And the doctor says to me, who did you expect him to look like? I thought that was a mean remark. And so I hung around the hospital for a couple of days, and then I took the baby home crying. And did he cry? He loved to cry. But at 62, there were so many Easterners came, and so many women came. It was just a constant parade past Baba, constant parade. There was no action or activity, no special events. Every once in a while, somebody'd get up and sing. You know, we wish they didn't, but they would do that every once in a while, some kind of playing or singing, because it was just so beautiful to see Baba just grabbing each person one after the other and hugging them. So much love was there. So much love was there in 62. 62. It was amazing. Thousands and thousands of people. They were all around. The tent was filled up. The 10,000 tent was filled up. All around the outside was filled up. As far as you could see, there was nothing but people and people and people. And Baba would sit there, bow down to everybody. And they'd take a break for Baba, make him sit down in the back for a few minutes, and then he'd come back again. He says all he craved was love. That's all he wanted was our love. Just love me would come to me. Just love me. Just love me. Nothing else mattered. And there were some of us who were fortunate enough to be seated. We were seated in the second row up front, watching Baba's reaction to each person as he came up, him giving himself. It was quite startling, giving himself to every single person because he would be facing us. It was very powerful. But when we were leaving, Baba, we had to go up on the stage. This was, most of the meetings with Baba were small private meetings, but now 62 was a big meeting, a general meeting. And we were in the tent. Outside the tent there were, I think, another 10,000 people around about. And so we went every day, sometimes twice a day and 3 times a day, in a long line queue before Baba, just coming up to Baba, bowing down to him and moving very fast because there were thousands and thousands of people. And so when I got to Baba, Baba said to me, "Did you see Mayra this trip?" And I said, "No, Baba, I didn't. I've been out here with you." So he says, "I want you to go back," and he pulled back the curtain himself. Pulled back the curtain and said, "Go backstage," or whatever you call it, I don't know, and see Mayra and say goodbye to her. Nobody was allowed to do this. So I did. I went back. And I had written to her, and she knew who I was. I had seen her before when they were here, and I was over there. I mean, wasn't just a strangers meeting, but Baba had kept her backstage the whole time. He didn't allow her to get mixed up with the hoi polloi. And so she took off, she had her sari on, she took off the pin that was holding her sari, and she gave it to me and as a present.
How do you feel about Mayra's closest connection to Baba as a woman? I mean, Baba felt that Mayra was his counterpart. Were you jealous?
Well, he's the one who knew, not me.
It did not make did it make other women jealous?
I don't think so. I don't recall that anybody was ever jealous of Mayra. Mayra did not make you jealous either. She always brought you to Baba. She wanted you to be close to Baba. The closer you were to Baba, the happier she was.
Do you remember a story with Margaret Crask where he asked Margaret Crask, "Would you come back with me again?"
Yes, and she said, "Of course, Baba." I mean, the worst thing that could happen to you is if you've made it to the other side and you're in, where are you? Samadhi or something or other. And then Baba says, "Oh, look, I got to go down again. Can you guys come with me?" Oh, I was in love with Adi. He was great. He was a great guy. He was a human being, and he sort of liked the girls. All of them did. They were always in trouble because Baba said, "Who are you looking at?" to the guys, because they'd always be looking, you know. And he would call Adi every time. Especially, he would get Adi to bend down. He would get the girl to bend down in front of him, and Adi would be standing behind her. And then he'd stop right that second and say, "Adi, what are you thinking?" I'd say, "Nothing, Baba, nothing." But he would always pull it off on him. And Adi took it good-naturedly, but he was embarrassed, of course. He was like clay in Baba's hands.
How about Mani? You were close to Mani?
I can't say anybody was close to Mani. I was friendly with her, and
You had quite a rapport, as I remember growing up. She used to write to you quite often.
yeah, she wrote to me every day later. I mean, she had thousands of people to take care of, and I was very friendly with her, and she was very friendly with me. I mean, we just acted like normal girls, which you couldn't do with all the Indian women. We just acted like normal girls. And she was very beautiful and very sweet. And she loved Baba so much. You could feel it.
Any other statements about being with Baba you want to make before we finish? Is it any different being without him in physical body? Or is it the same feeling that you have now as you did then? Or how is it different?
He's not here. Suppose I wasn't here. Would it make any difference to you?
Of course.
Well, of course. The answer is of course. Of course. To be with Baba's physical presence, to be able to see him, to be able to hug him and kiss him. I can't describe that. We were floating in the air. We're floating in the air. He's always here. He never goes away. That's one thing I'm sure of. He never goes away. He always knows what's going on with you, especially what's going on with your heart. And if you have problems in your heart, and a few people do, you should communicate with Baba. He wants you to communicate with him. He wants you to be close with you in your suffering. Don't feel, well, I can't bother Baba now. I think that's a mistake. He wants you to be one with him, especially when you're suffering.